In this video, we're going to take a look at the Excel 2013 Chapter 2 Skill-Based Training in My IT Lab. And we're going to go through some of these steps. There's a couple of things that sometimes can trip people up, so hopefully we'll be able to address all of those as well. And show you just exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to complete this training. Starting with the first activity, we're going to enter a formula in cell D8, and we're going to calculate the difference between the house cost and the down payment. Simply a this minus this type of formula. So we want to say this cell will equal the value of this cell minus this cell. And then you can hit enter, and you'll see that that gets populated. Now we want to copy this down. Now in normal Excel you would think, okay, if I copy this, it's just going to put 320,000 in all of these different cells, and that's not what we're after. But that's actually not what it's going to do. When we copy this down by dragging that corner down towards those other cells, all those other values get placed in there. And that's because the formula is smart enough to recognize I'm no longer looking at that row, I'm looking at the relative formula for each of these subsequent rows. Here we were doing B8 minus C8, but here Excel is smart enough to know, hey, we don't want the same thing. We want B9 minus C9, B10, B11, B12, etc. So we're going to play around with formulas a lot in this one. We're going to make a formula here in F8, and we're going to calculate the rate per period for the loan. And we're going to divide the mortgage rate by the number of payments per year. So we're going to do E8 divided by B5. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to see that Excel is pretty good about handling that, and there's no problem at all making that calculation. Now My IT Lab is actually sending you down, I don't want to say a bad path, because it's good to be able to see what's happening here and know why the formula appears the way it appears. We're going to drag that formula down the same way we did with the other one, and you're going to see that we have a division by zero error, a value error, and then zeros here. Clearly something went wrong. What My IT Lab is trying to show you, though, is that your E8 to B5, E8 divided by B5 formula has changed as we go down, E9, but now it's to B6. Well, as you can see, B6 doesn't have anything in it. So we're actually dividing by zero in that particular cell. So that's not what we intended. We need to undo that. The easy way to undo is a Control-Z. You can also, I believe there's a button up there somewhere to do an undo. I find Control-Z to be the easiest one. There it is. There's the undo button. You could have clicked this, or you can do a Control-Z. I did Control-Z. And then we're going to edit the rate per period function, the formula here. So we like the E8. We want this to remain here, but we want to change B5 into an absolute reference. Now, to make sure that when we drag this down, we're not jumping down to these other cells as well, we're going to make this B5 have dollar signs in front of its references. We're going to be $B, $5. That means even though I drag this down and the E8 will turn into F or E9, E9, E10, E11, E12, B5 will always remain. So this is Excel's way of working around that particular conflict. So now I can drag this down, and you can see that everything will populate properly. And all of those are actually different values now, appropriate values. In the next step, we're going to enter a formula in H8, and this one's going to calculate the number of payment periods for the loan. The number of payment periods is going to be the number of years on the loan times the number of payments per year. So 25 times 12 in this case. So we're going to say that's equal to this cell times this cell. And in this case, my IT Lab is actually giving you the formula, G8 times B $5. Now, you could do $B $5 or you can do B $5, but because this is vertical, the only thing that's changing in this cell as we go further on down is we'd be going B5, B6, B7, B8. The B really never changes, right? So we're going to put the $ only on the front of the 5, making the 5 portion stick. And when we do that, we have our 300, which is 12 times 25, and then we can drag that down and it will be appropriate for all of those other cells. So use that $ in front of the parts of the cell anytime you want that part to stick if you're copying the formula on down. We're going to create a circular reference over here. Now, a circular reference means it's trying to solve for that equation using its own data. Well, that doesn't make sense. In order to solve it, I would have had to already solve for the value of that cell. So that doesn't work. I can't figure out I8 by using I8 in that definition. So I'm going to try it because my IT Lab wants you to see what happens with this circular reference. And it says, careful, we found one or more circular references. You can take a look at help and you can see why mathematically this really can't make sense. One thing I love about Excel 2013 and all of Office 2013 is that the help functions are great. They've been greatly improved version over version, and now they're actually really nice. They have graphical examples and it's really very easy to read. So we can close this out and we can say OK, and we're going to fix this correctly. We're going to do I9 to I12. We're going to calculate the correct percentage financed for the first loan in cell 8 by dividing we're going to create this formula and then we're going to copy it on down to I9 to I12. We're going to create the correct formula by dividing the amount financed. So I'm just going to clear this on out and we're going to say this is going to be equal to the amount financed divided by the house cost. What percentage of the house is actually being financed? And that's 80% of the house, and we can copy this down. And we've avoided the circular reference. Circular references are usually just a mistake, and it points that out so we don't have invalid data. As you can see, we're tying this to large number mortgages, and we don't want any errors in our formulas or calculations. We need to make sure this is all very precise. So we always want it to catch our errors. We're going to use the autosum feature to sum B8 to B12 into this cell right down here, B16. We want the total value of all of the houses bought. Now, something strange that happens in this particular segment of my IT Lab, you'll notice these numbers look a little bit weird. There's something missing here in the value. The commas are all off. These aren't even correct looking numbers. Anyway, ignore that, get past it, and we're going to auto sum those values. We click on the auto sum button and it creates a sum function for us, and then we select the values that we want to include in that function and then hit enter, and that creates the proper value. On the next one, we're going to create an average function down here in cell B17. Very similar to what we did for auto sum, but instead of auto sum, we're going to auto average. We're going to choose average, and then once that gets populated, we can select over those house costs, and this is going to give us the average number of all of those house costs. Again, don't get tied up on the strange looking number there. There's just a little glitch in my IT Lab that I think the formatting of those numbers is wrong. You'll notice everything is fixed in the next step. Next one we're going to do is the median function, and we're going to use the function command for this under the formulas tab. we're going to use the insert function to find median. We're going to search for MEDIAN, and there it is. You can double click it, or you can just say OK. And then here's our median function with its arguments. We want to still use B8 to B12 for the range for the median, and then we can say OK. And the median value is there. That's the one, if you lined them all up together and sorted them, it's the very middle value. The next one we're going to do is a minimum. This one's going to automatically calculate the very lowest value out of the set, and we can use the autosum arrow for this one because it's a common one. And the minimum value will be the very smallest number of those. Highlight them and hit enter, and that'll pop up. And then we're also going to do the max right under that. We're going to choose max under the autosum feature, and it wants to choose these. We need to make sure we're going up here and choosing the maximum of those other values, and then hit enter. And there's the highest one, was the 400,000. And then there's another one that actually counts up the number of houses. You can choose count the numbers, and in my mind I would normally select the lone numbers for this. That one is actually considered an incorrect action. We're going to do a count, but we're going to focus that instead on still the house cost in the B column. In the real world, it wouldn't matter if you counted the number of loan numbers or if you counted the house costs. It would all depend on what you're really keying on for your formula, but in my IT lab they want you to count the number of house costs that are listed there. When you get to access later on, you're going to see that it makes more sense to key on the loan numbers, really, because that is what we're uniquely identifying these as. So now we've made that count number here, B8 to B12, in cell B21. And now we're going to change the value in cell B9 to 425. Now there's a reason they have us doing this one, B9 to 425. It's because you're going to see some changes here. You're going to see a change to the average. You're going to see a change to the highest, 425,000. You don't need to put in the commas. That's a formulated. That's a formatted number that's automatically going to put in those commas for you. We're going to use the date and time to automatically populate today's date into this cell here, into B4. And that's in the Formulas tab. There's all these neat formulas that you can use, formulas and functions all over the place. Excel is a really powerful mathematical tool. We're going to use the one for today. We'll scroll down, and we're going to choose today. You'll see a little bit of information about this function that you've chosen. It doesn't take any arguments, but you still do need the parentheses around that. And you say OK, and it will put in today's date, or at least the today's date that my IT lab had. Don't get thrown off if you don't happen to be doing this assignment on 7/17/2015. Today's date is being calculated differently in the simulated Excel. It's not even the same as the date right now that I'm creating this video. So we're going to edit the formula in cell K8 now, and we're going to add the plus G8 after the closing parentheses. So many of our other functions, we're actually putting things within the parentheses. This one we're going to actually tab it on at the end, G8, and hit enter. And now we're going to format this particular cell so that we are using the number format. The payoff year is not 1905, but when Excel has a number and it's trying to figure out how to format that number, if it thinks it's a date, it's going to try to make that into a date, and that isn't appropriate for us. We're going to format that result with the number format, and we can do that over here. This is selected. There's a couple ways we can do it. We can right click and choose format cells. I also like to do this one, and we can use the drop down and it'll show us that we want a number for that field. So the payoff year is 2036.00. Well, we don't want those decimals there either. We want to get rid of those decimals. We're going to use this function right here, and we're going to decrease the number of decimals displayed in that number. Drop that down by 2, and now our year is 2036. We're going to copy that first payoff year formula, and we're going to copy that down to these other cells so that they all have the payoff year automatically calculated. On the next step, we are going to use a VLOOKUP function. Why VLOOKUP? There's a lookup function, there's a VLOOKUP function, there's an HLOOKUP function. Many people find the lookup function to be easier to use, but the book is focused on VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, and my IT lab is looking for the VLOOKUP function here. So you must use VLOOKUP for this and for the greater projects if you're working on those. In the real world, use the function that you want to use that's appropriate for the task. VLOOKUP is designed to look up things vertically. HLOOKUP will look up things horizontally. So in this case, in cell G9, we are going to do exactly the formula that it's asking for, the VLOOKUP. And in there we're going to say F9. We're going to use the value from the F9 field as our starting place. And we're going to look up values within this D4 to E6 range. So we're going to take this value, we're going to look up the corresponding value in this range. So my 25 years, we'll end up finding the 3.625% value. And then we do a comma, and we're going to say the number 2 and then false. And close your parentheses and hit enter. Whoops, something I did wasn't quite right. I'm going to try typing that in completely instead of using the selection, and that may work a little bit better for me here. Actually, I know exactly why that didn't work for me. Selecting that alone was D4 to E6. You'll notice there's our dollar signs again. We want those values to stick. We don't want them sliding down as we slide down our formula to later cells. So that was my mistake. In troubleshooting that is where my problem was. I want to do this precisely the way that my IT lab is expecting. I would have found out soon enough if this was real Excel, because all of my numbers would have looked wrong. So my F9, $D, $4, and then a colon, $E, $6, a comma 2, whoops, comma 2, comma false. I do all caps because that's what they have there, and that formula should take just fine. And I'm going to copy that formula down. If I do a drag down here, whoops, to 13, it says incorrect action for this one. I'm actually going to do a Control C, a copy. I can do a copy up here as well. And then I'm going to select where I want it to go, and I'm going to do a paste. Control V. I can do a paste there as well. This is one that just doesn't like you dragging those formulas down for whatever reason. Just keep in mind, sometimes using some of the alternate methods in Excel works out better for you. The next one we're going to do here is we're going to do a monthly payment function. This one's kind of a cool function. There's a lot going on here, and it's all in the book. We're going to do PMT G9 divided by $B, $5. We're going to do F9 times $B, $5. And then we're going to do a negative D9 as the value that we're taking these payments from. So we're going to take G9, the APR, divided by the number of payments. So this is the amount that's being added as interest on this loan every single month. And then we're going to see the number of payments that we're making, and that's going to be the years times the payments per year. And then the starting value for that is going to be this 339750. But we have to throw that negative sign in front of our D9 because we want this monthly payment field to end up as a positive number. This 1723, this is chipping away at the 339. So in some sense, it makes sense that that number should be negative. But when we look at this as human beings, we usually like to see a monthly payment in as a positive number. So how much do I owe? I owe 1723. I don't owe negative 1723. That doesn't make sense. So in order to do that, we kind of manipulate the signage of this by making us start from a negative amount financed to make that turn into a positive number. And that's not unusual. We're going to copy that down to H13. This one it let me drag down. Again, sometimes you'll want to do some different methods to copy that formula down. Try out the different methods. You'll find one that works. And now we're going to do another cool function. This is the if function. It lets Excel make a choice based on some of the values that we have. So we're going to use an if statement to make a determination on our PMI. Now, all of the information is there. If you're clever, you may be able to figure out how that if statement should work. Fortunately for us, my IT lab does give us the exact formula. This is a good thing to practice with. Even if you just type this in just as it is, it's good to be able to know how to do these, because this is one of the more powerful functions in Excel, is the if function. If cell E9 is greater than or equal to $B, $7, so if E9 is greater than or equal to this, I'm going to provide 0 into that cell. If that is not a true statement, instead I'm going to have D9 times $B, $6 divided by $B, $5. Or the D9 cell times the PMI rate divided by the number of payments per year. And you can see that one ended up with nothing in it because this was a true statement. When this evaluates to true, we give back this. When this evaluates to false, we give back this result. And as we drag this down, you'll see that that does populate out. Here's another one. We're going to do a copy. I do a Control C. Again, you can use copy here. And then select the ones we want to paste to, Control V, or use the paste up there. And you'll see some of those have values and some don't, because some of them that statement resolves to true, and some of them that statement will resolve to false. Now this next step, we're going to do something that allows us to kind of give ourselves a shortcut when we're working with some of these ranges. We don't want to have to keep typing in $D, $4, $E, $6 for some of these ranges. So we're going to define this range so that we can make a shortcut. And we can do that real simply here. We just type in rates and hit enter, and now that range is defined as the name rates. We can put that into formulas, into functions, and then take advantage of that as we go further. So we're going to use the name manager. Over here in formulas we have a name manager that helps us manage all these names that we're creating for ranges. We'll go to the name manager, and what we want to do is we want to edit highest house cost. We want it to just be called high cost. Now typically when we use these, we want these to be descriptive so that they're useful for us, but we also want to keep them relatively short. The whole idea of these named ranges is for our convenience. We can always just type out the whole named range, but here we're trying to save ourselves some work. And we're going to keep the name manager dialog box open. We're going to delete the title name. Yes, we do want to do that. And then we're going to close the name manager dialog box. So this lets us work with some of those variable names that we're creating for ourselves to use. Now we're actually going to plug in that rates name that we made. So instead of using this range, we can go back to that VLOOKUP function over here in G9, and instead of using this ugly looking range, we can use the name rates. That's going to save us quite a bit of typing. And once we type that in, you'll notice we're saying that we're going to do a lookup. We want to look up the value in F9 against the table of rates, and it's going to provide the corresponding value. And then we want to copy that edited formula on down to G10 to G13. We can do the drag down for that one, or copy and paste. And this last worksheet, we're going to create a new worksheet just for these range names. We're going to make this new sheet, and we're going to rename it so that it's useful to us as range names. And we're going to type in range names up here in cell A1, and we're going to type in location in B1. We're going to simultaneously bold these. How do we simultaneously bold? We select all the cells that we want to affect, and we can do a Control B as the keyboard shortcut, or we can click on the icon to simultaneously bold two cells, or as many cells as we have selected. We're going to use the use in formula command to paste some ranges into A2, and that one is also over here, and the use in formula command. We can paste our names right down in here, so we have a list of all of these names. We're just going to paste the whole list, and it's going to drop them right in there for us. And so that we can see these, we're going to change the width on that particular column to 20, and we want to change this one to 25. Now it's a whole lot easier to be able to land directly on 25 by using the type in function, but you should be able to stretch this to 25 simply by dragging it. Now my IT lab likes the precision. Let's just type it in and be exact. And that is the end of the Chapter 2 skill-based training for Excel 2013.